Let's meet our panel. Don Kiselewski is the Executive Director of External Affairs for Florida Power and Light and also the Chair of the Florida Chamber Foundation. Also on the panel, our own Mark Wilson, President of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. And our moderator is the Vice President of the Florida Chamber Foundation, Kyle Baltuch. Let's give him a big chamber welcome.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us here this morning. Obviously, I think the economy got fixed while we were backstage, so great work out here. I'm going to ask that all of you be very kind with me. These are my two bosses on stage, so they make some bad jokes. Laugh. We'll practice right now. Ha, ha, ha. No, but guys, thank you seriously for joining us. I want to have a conversation today about what we do within the Florida Chamber of Commerce in the context of supporting the business community. I think you heard Mark this morning kind of talk about the visioning of where we're headed towards 2030, but it truly is the business community that's guiding us there. So excited to have my chair with us here today, and of course the president of our organization. So Don, before we dive in, could you just give us a little bit of background of your role with FPL and how you became a partner within the Florida Chamber of Commerce?
Certainly. Don Kiselewski, everybody just calls me Don K. I've been at FPL now for 20 years on the external affairs team, and we are primarily focused on local governmental. Gotcha. And we have our solar projects and our battery projects, and those are all the type of things that we as a team work on in permitting and getting approved.
Awesome.
Yep.
And obviously you have a unique experience. You now chair the Florida Chamber of Commerce Foundation, but you've also chaired local chambers. How did you get engaged in the chamber world?
You get engaged. It's just,
fair enough.
You walk in the door and you say, I'm going to commit myself to try to make a difference. Noel Martinez is here from the Palm Beach North Chamber. I had the privilege of chairing that chamber, then Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches. And same with this organization is you, I hate to say it because I use it so often, you lean in. Yeah. You need to give of yourself to try to make a difference, to be involved and commit yourself.
Awesome. So I'll dive into my first content question, and Don, I'm not going to pick on you, but I'm going to start with you on this one too.
Let's keep going.
The role of the business community in achieving the 2030 blueprint, obviously it's a unique tool, but what responsibility does the business community have in ensuring Florida's entire economic growth as we lead toward the 10th largest economy in the world by 2030?
So I'm going to frame it a certain way.
Sure.
Mark, the Chamber has had a lot of great success with our legislature and partnering with them. We've had tort reform, we've had insurance reform, we've had live local, and there is certainly a lot of opportunity to continue to work with our legislature to make improvements for our state, but we are not going to grow to the 10th largest economy by legislating it.
Yeah.
We are going to have to get into our communities, into our 67 counties, and as business leaders, take the messages that we have today and share those and have those conversations and say, hey, why aren't we pulling up the floridascorecard.org and looking at these metrics, and why aren't we focused on childhood reading, poverty, whatever it is? We as leaders need to own it in our communities to drive it as a collective voice for our state.
Yeah. And Mark, you travel the state probably more than anybody I know. You're giving this presentation, but you're also receiving that feedback from Fortune 500s all the way down to small businesses. What are they saying about the role that they need to play and how partnering with a local or the Florida Chamber in this instance supports that initiative? Yeah, so I appreciate the question, Don. I appreciate your answer too. I think as I travel the state and work with local chambers of commerce, and I was here with Fairwinds and Alicia just last week, we had a lot of nonprofit leaders together. I think what people are looking for is, there's this internal and external component. Every business leader knows what she needs to do to run her business or he needs to do to run his business. And we tend to think internal. What do I need to do at my company? I think if we could figure out a way to support you better at your company, but then figure out a way to know what's going on in the community, right? So there's the working in your business, but there's the working on your business, and the on your business is what's happening in the community. And so one reason we're so bullish on what if every county commission, what if the cabinet and the legislature and the county commissions and city councils and chambers and economic development groups, what if we all started off with how many jobs need to be created by 2030 in my county?
And are all of the groups that businesses write checks to, all of the nonprofit groups, what are they doing to play their part in pushing the right things happening on the 6 pillars to make sure that we're growing the private sector one community at a time? And I think the last thing I'd say about this, Kyle, is, this old adage we've all talked about for years, you can't boil the ocean, right? Like, we can't do all of it, but if everybody does their part, then all of a sudden it moves in the right direction. So maybe we'll talk more about that. But I think I'm real bullish. If Florida was a stock, I think y'all know I'd be buying it, right? And it's leadership, elected leadership comes and goes. What everybody in this room is focused on is, through the 6 pillars, how can we get staying power, and how can we make sure, one community at a time, we're actually putting the long term ahead of the short term. And like, when that happens, then we keep the momentum going.
Kyle, can I?
Absolutely.
Let me jump in. By a show of hands, how many of you today belong to a chamber, an economic development organization, where you bring up the Florida scorecard and have a conversation in any of your regular meetings? Show of hands? All right. Well, that's a good start. We need to get the rest of you, though.
Yeah. And I think, Mark, it's something you say all the time. It's actually a conversation I was having with one of our board members today outside. You measure what's important. And the reality is, having this research out there, having this resource out there, we're trying to ensure that every community has the ability to create their own pathway towards success, but they have a way to measure it. As we talk kind of about that long-term visioning, Don, one of the most important pieces for Florida's long-term growth is infrastructure.
Right.
Obviously, FPL knows all about that from the energy side of the house, but talk to me a little bit. We are the fastest growing state post-pandemic in the entire country. How is infrastructure going to play a role in what it looks like next for the state of Florida? And again, how can the tools in the pillar framework help guide what type of infrastructure we need to be investing in?
By the very nature that we are here less than 2 weeks after a Category 3 storm hit one of our most populated portions of the state is a testament to infrastructure in Florida.
Absolutely.
We had probably, if not the largest, one of the largest evacuations.
Yep.
We had tidal surge, we had power, we had ports impacted, and here we are less than a week, everything for the most part, except for those who had devastating damage, who couldn't get back into their homes. We returned. So infrastructure requires a constant focus and a long-term plan. It's very easy to say there are other priorities that can keep. Right. We'll wait another year, and then you get 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, and your roads are falling apart and your bridges are falling apart. So it's critical that we maintain a constant focus on infrastructure, again, whether it's EV charging or energy or roads and on down the line.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty too of the work that we're doing is infrastructure. I mean, like many words out there, it's such a broad term. And if you go through the 2030 blueprint, we've actually outlined some of those most vital infrastructure needs, whether it be our roadways, whether it be our connectivity, whether it be our ports. We're also doing constant reports on this. Trade and Logistics 2030 actually outlines specifically within each community what those infrastructure challenges look like as it relates to our trade and logistics pieces. So I think, again, that's another way to leverage the Florida Chamber Foundation. If you're saying, okay, we know we need infrastructure, but what does that mean for my community? Reach out to us, use our tools. We actually have information. If you want to know how many people have a car in your zip code, go to the GAP map. If you want to know what do our ports look like in our community, go to Trade and Logistics, but we're here to help. Mark, infrastructure means nothing if we don't have the workforce and the talent to get to where it needs to be. So infrastructure is great, but if you have the best infrastructure in the world and no talent to fill those roadways, it doesn't matter. Talk to us a little bit about some of the work the Florida Chamber Foundation not only has done historically, but as we pivot to the future, what talent supply and education looks like in Florida and how we are leading in that growth.
Yeah, sure. So I'll tie it to infrastructure, I think. As I said when I was up here earlier today, all 6 pillars, there's no silver bullet, it all matters. And if you think of infrastructure, whether it's moving freight around or moving people around or water or energy, think of our ports, our spaceport, our airport, our roads, our rail, sea. It's like the arteries and veins of the economy. So infrastructure literally is economic development. And I love the question because I said earlier today, we can't have one without the other. So we're going to need 1.4 million more jobs by 2030, and we're literally training people today for jobs that don't yet exist, right? So we're going away from needing this degree and going to needing this certification or this set of skills. I think we shared that with you years ago. That's not a news flash, that's what's happening. At this conference, we'll be unveiling our talent center that we created earlier this year. You've all heard of the future of work. You're going to hear from one of our vice presidents, Rachel Ludwig, later today. We're going to be unveiling publicly. There's in every region of Florida, we're going to unveil, our research team has looked out to 2030, and we've looked at what are the most in-demand careers going to be in 2030 in each of your regions, so that we can start talking to middle schoolers and high schoolers and grandparents and parents and guidance counselors and teachers and HR managers. And if you knew, here are the in-demand careers, the top in-demand careers in my region, then we can start having community conversations through your local chamber, through your EDC, through CareerSource, through the county commission, through the school board. And can you imagine if the school boards would put up the talent data that we have? And can you imagine if school boards would start talking about the in-demand careers in the region that you're in out to 2030? The community conversation would be different. And then instead of having young people think, I have to leave Florida for a good job, or I have to leave Ocala or wherever it might be for a good job, the reality of it is we flip the script and we talk about, look at all these cool careers. 2/3 of the in-demand careers in 2030 don't require a 4-year degree. So we all need to get used to skilled trades. We need to get used to CTE. We need to get used to talking about a job is what matters. So infrastructure is not going to matter if we don't have the talent, and talent's not going to matter if we don't have innovation, if we don't have quality of life and so forth. So it all goes together.
100%. And let me underscore something so important that Mark just said. We looked out to those fastest growing careers, and we call them careers very intentionally. These are jobs that pay above the median wage in Florida. These are your white picket fence, your 2.2 kids, and your dog. This is your American dream. And there are more than 800 job codes in the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Don't go look at them unless you can't fall asleep at night. Those top 30 will make up more than 20% of all job growth. 20% out of more than 800. So these are not only high-paying, great careers, they are really in demand in our state. And if you're curious what they are, during lunch, we have them out there on our research table. Please speak with our senior research economist, Sheridan Morby. She'll happily walk you through them. Don, I want to connect a point here really quickly, because you can't get to that talent without getting to school. And you can't get to school if you're growing up in challenges that some of us have never even understood or couldn't even imagine. Mark mentioned in his opening that the Path Prosperity Scholarship, which is an incredible program, actually targets scholarships to high-performing students from low-income communities. And FPL, to date, is the largest sponsor of that program. You guys have actually provided more than 1,000 scholarships through this program. Talk to me about why investing in our prosperity communities is so important.
Mark spoke about it earlier about the #1 state university system in the nation, and here we have greater than 17% of children in poverty in our state, trying to get it down to below 10%. And how do you change generational poverty in Florida? And that's what we're trying to do. It's not one thing. I certainly think Florida Prepaid is an excellent way to provide opportunities to those individuals. I have been there when you've had families who this is their first time that someone is going beyond a high school level in their community to get that scholarship. It is transformational for their thought process and where they're going to go and trajectory of their life. So I'm honored that FPL's had a small role in that. I think every business can have their own chance to make a difference, whether going through the gap map and going in and seeing what childhood reading scores are in their zip code and getting in and saying, you know what, I'm going to own going into that school and making a difference for those kids who can't read on grade level. And it doesn't have to be a big dollar amount. It can be a commitment from your business for the dedication of time.
And I think that's the beauty of the visioning of the 2030 Blueprint is all scholarship programs are incredible. And opening up access to higher education is so vitally important. But looking through those 150 zip codes where half of all children in poverty live, and just for a reminder for all, federal poverty line, if you grew up in a family of 3 like I did, single parent household, 2 kids, it's about $25,000 a year. We're talking about children who are facing incredible challenges and have overcome them and need that door opened. And this isn't just another scholarship program. This is a targeted scholarship program like everything we do to make sure that we're going to get the highest return on investment as a state and as business leaders. So you said small role, but it was a massive commitment, and we thank you for that sincerely. I want to open up to kind of a final question for both of you. And Mark, I'll start with you, and I'll end with you, Don. As you have worked for the Chamber for a number of years, you've probably spoken to more business leaders than anybody in the state. Why are business leaders getting engaged in a chamber, and why right now is it so important that they make that decision to get involved?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I think I would ask all of you to sort of search within you too about, why are you here, and what could we do between this year and next year to really move the needle further? And I think, I guess I would say a couple things. One is, I think some of you have heard me say this before, but there's only one legitimate excuse for a Chamber of Commerce, and it's called leadership. And it's that space where the things that need to happen aren't going to happen if not for a strong chamber that's willing to say, we're going to put a diverse group of people together who might not agree on how we're going to get there, but everyone would agree, if we want to be the 10th largest economy in the world and we want 100% of our kindergartners ready for kindergarten, just as one of 39 examples, who besides the business community would actually have the courage and get in a room and do that and figure out we're going to put on a path to do that? And so it surprises a lot of people that we have that tenacity and we have that leadership focus. But I would be remiss if I didn't say the other end of that to really search is, I've said this for years, Proverbs 29:18 says, where there's no vision, the people will perish. And so to me, there's a bookend of every presentation I ever give, which is, on one end, if we're not here to lead our state, then what the heck are we doing? And two, what's the vision that we're trying to get to? Because I'll tell you, we could fight like cats and dogs over how. Should we mandate something? Should we fund it better? Should we have better standards? Should we have this? Should we have that? Those are really healthy conversations. But if leaders aren't talking about the vision of where we need to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, then we're going to be like other states and other countries where they argue about how do we make the budget work, or they start talking about things that really don't move the needle forward. So my encouragement to everybody is, as you listen to the presenters today and tomorrow, be thinking about what could you do in your community to help long-term ahead of the short-term. And if everybody just does a little bit, it's like that aircraft carrier with 5,000 outboard motors I talk about all the time. If everybody gets to point it wherever they want to, the aircraft carrier goes in a circle. But if the CO says, we're going 13 degrees and everybody points the outboard motor to 13 degrees, that aircraft carrier goes and it goes in a hurry. And that's the opportunity we all have here, is to literally be an aircraft carrier with outboard motors pointed in the same direction.
That was a fantastic answer.
Yeah, right? Sure, leave me hanging now.
Sorry about that, Don. No, but from your perspective as the chair of the foundation, I guess, how has getting engaged with this group and with your fellow leaders helped guide your thoughts as you're working within your community at FPL?
The pride I take in this organization is immense because Mark talked about leadership, and I remember when Tony Carvajal was in your seat and he was talking about poverty and childhood poverty and reading scores, and we're like, are we really going to do this? Are we really going there? And the conversation was, well, if we don't, who will?
Right.
And if the business community doesn't align behind making a difference for the children of our community or the infrastructure or the jobs, I mean, who else is going to do it? No disrespect to elected officials, they are on their own calendar for getting into their next seat in office. And we as a business community need to have a long-term vision for the betterment of our state, whether it's at your local chamber or here with your state chamber.
I think that's a perfect way to end it. And both of you, thank you so much. And let's have more of this conversation at our tables during lunch. But thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, a big thank you to our panel. Hey, we